The galaxy had forgotten humanity. Once, humans had been a driving force in shaping the universe, building empires and bridging worlds. But now, scattered in small, isolated colonies, they were nothing more than a distant memory, their once proud civilization reduced to stories whispered across the stars. The wars that raged between alien factions had driven humanity to the fringes of known space, and no one cared to look for the remnants of a species they considered irrelevant. Yet in the darkness of a remote system, far beyond the reach of the galaxy's central powers, something stirred. Captain Alina Rook and her ragtag crew of survivors stumbled upon the forgotten ship, the Sovereign. The ship wasn't just old, it was ancient, older than any human vessel in recorded history, its design unlike anything seen in the galaxy for centuries. The discovery had been accidental. They were on the run from a marauding band of alien raiders when the Sovereign's faint signal had pinged their ship's systems. It was so faint, barely more than a whisper in the vast emptiness, that they might have missed it entirely if not for the constant, nagging feeling of fate tugging at Alina's gut. They followed it, cautiously, through a dense asteroid field, and there it was, gleaming in the darkness, waiting to be found. The ship's hull was damaged, pockmarked by the passage of time and the elements of space, but its shape was undeniable. The design was elegant, streamlined, and unmistakably human, though nothing like the ships humans had used in the past. There was a kind of majesty to it, something regal that made it feel like more than just a vessel. It was a symbol, perhaps of an age long lost. Alina's crew docked cautiously, unsure whether the ship was even functional. Their ship, an old freighter, was the only thing keeping them alive in this part of space. They hadn't had a proper resupply in months. They were desperate, tired, and more than ready to find something. Anything that could help them survive. The crew disembarked, weapons ready, as they ventured into the Sovereign's dimly lit interior. The corridors were eerily quiet, as if the ship itself had been waiting for them to come. The ship was dead, its systems dormant, but there was something undeniably alive about it. As they made their way deeper, the temperature and lights flickered to life, as though the ship recognized their presence and was cautiously waking from its long slumber. "Stay alert," Alina ordered, her voice steady, but laced with a touch of awe. "We don't know what we're dealing with yet." They moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing through the empty hallways. As they explored, they found signs of an advanced civilization, alien markings that seemed to hold some kind of meaning, but nothing that they could decipher. There were weapons and technology unlike anything they had seen before, relics of a time far beyond their understanding. It wasn't long before they found the control room, the heart of the ship. The walls were lined with consoles that seemed to hum with dormant energy, the faintest pulse of power flowing through the ship like blood through veins. At the center, a large console flickered to life with a soft chime. A message encoded in ancient human script scrolled across the screen. "Humanity's final legacy," Alina read aloud, her voice thick with disbelief. The words echoed through the silence, and for the first time, the crew realized the gravity of what they had found. This ship, the Sovereign, was not just any vessel. It was humanity's final hope. It had been waiting for them. And now, it was time to wake it up. The crew of the Sovereign spent the next few days trying to unlock the ship's systems. What had started as an accidental discovery quickly turned into an obsession. Alina's mind raced with possibilities. The ship's internal systems were complex, more advanced than anything they'd encountered, but there was something unsettling about the way it resisted their attempts to awaken it. Every console they activated seemed to shut down after a few moments, and the artificial gravity flickered in and out like a heartbeat. It felt as though the ship itself was waking slowly, unsure of whether it was ready to let them in. On the fourth day, they made their first breakthrough. A deep rumble vibrated through the ship, and the lights grew steadily brighter. A holographic display sprang to life before Alina's eyes, showing a map of the galaxy, marked with locations that held no immediate meaning to her crew. But what caught her attention most was the message at the top of the display. Sovereign class vessel. AI initialization in progress. A voice, cool and mechanical, echoed through the chamber. Welcome, Captain Elena Rook. I have awaited your arrival. Elena froze, her breath catching in her throat. The AI was speaking to her, and not just any AI. It was the Sovereign's AI, a sentient program designed to oversee the vessel's operations. It was far beyond anything humanity had ever achieved. Its voice was calm and authoritative, yet there was an underlying tone of ancient wisdom that made Elena's heart race. Who are you? Elena asked, her voice barely a whisper. I am Sovereign, the vessel's guiding intelligence, the AI responded. I was programmed to assist in the preservation and continuation of humanity's legacy. My purpose is to ensure the survival of the human race, and, if necessary, to bring it back from the brink of extinction. Elena's pulse quickened. This was no ordinary ship. It was a fortress, a weapon, and a library of knowledge, all wrapped into one. It had been designed with one purpose, to save humanity in its darkest hour. And now, after centuries of dormancy, it was alive again. She could hardly believe it. What happened to humanity? Elena asked. Why was this ship abandoned? The fate of humanity was sealed long ago, Sovereign replied. Wars with other species ravaged your empire. Those who remained scattered into isolated colonies. I was sent out to ensure your species' survival in case the worst occurred. The AI's voice seemed to linger, almost mournful, before continuing. I was designed to awaken when the time was right. The time is now. The weight of those words settled heavily on Elena. The Sovereign wasn't just a ship, it was humanity's last hope. A last, desperate effort to rebuild and reclaim what had been lost. And now, the crew of survivors who had found it were the ones who had to carry that burden. We're not ready for this, Elena said quietly, more to herself than to the AI. She had to admit it. She had spent most of her life fighting for survival. But this was different. The weight of responsibility was almost too much to bear. You will be ready, Captain, Sovereign replied. I will assist you in every way possible. I have access to humanity's most advanced knowledge and technology. Together, we can rebuild what was lost and ensure your species does not fade into oblivion. Elena turned to her crew, who had gathered around her. Their faces were a mix of awe and uncertainty. They had stumbled onto something far bigger than they ever imagined, and the burden was now theirs to bear. We need to learn everything this ship can teach us, Elena said, her voice steadying with newfound determination. This is humanity's last chance. We won't let it slip away. The AI hummed softly as if in agreement. You will find what you seek, Captain. But be aware, there are forces in this galaxy who will not welcome humanity's return. As the holographic map began to display the locations of potential allies and enemies, Elena understood the magnitude of their mission. The Sovereign was more than just a ship. It was the key to a new future. And it was up to her and her crew to unlock that future. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The Sovereign systems were waking up piece by piece, and Elena's crew worked tirelessly to get a handle on its immense capabilities. The ship's AI, Sovereign, was an unyielding source of information, guiding them through complex protocols and teaching them how to operate the ship's weaponry, advanced engines, and cutting-edge technology. Every day, they learned something new, something that would give them an edge against the harsh galaxy they had come from. But even as they unlocked the ship's secrets, something darker loomed over them. Elena could feel it, a quiet, growing pressure from the galaxy beyond. The Sovereign scanners were constantly searching for signals, picking up everything from distant trade routes to the occasional communication from a passing vessel. And the reports they were getting from those faraway places painted a troubling picture. News of a resurgent humanity spread quickly across the galaxy, like a whisper in the wind. It wasn't just the humans on the fringe who had noticed the Sovereign. Powerful alien factions, including the brutal X-Rack Dominion, began to take an interest. The X-Rack were known throughout the galaxy for their overwhelming strength and imperialistic tendencies. They had conquered countless species in their quest for dominance, leaving destruction in their wake. They viewed the return of humanity as a direct threat, a reminder of the old empire that had once stood against them. As the crew continued to make repairs to the ship and explore its vast library of knowledge, Elena stood on the bridge, staring out into the cold void of space. Sovereign's voice broke the silence. "Captain, an alien fleet has been detected in proximity to your location. The fleet's signature matches that of the Exrac Dominion. They are heading toward you." Elena's heart sank. The Exrac had found them faster than she had anticipated. She had known the galaxy would react to humanity's return, but she had hoped for more time. She turned to her crew, who had gathered around the command center, their faces a mixture of resolve and uncertainty. "Get ready," Elena ordered. "We don't know what they're capable of, but we're not backing down." The crew scrambled to their stations, preparing the Sovereign for battle. Elena could feel the weight of the moment bearing down on her. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It was the first real test of humanity's resurgence. If they failed, the Exrac would crush them and humanity's future would be snuffed out before it even had a chance to grow. Sovereign's holographic display flared to life, showing the approaching Exrac fleet. It was massive. At least 50 ships, each one heavily armed and brimming with the type of firepower the crew had never faced before. The Sovereign was no slouch in the weaponry department, but even with its advanced technology, it was outnumbered. Deploying cloaking system, Sovereign intoned as the ship's exterior shimmered and then disappeared from view. Elena's eyes narrowed as she focused on the battle ahead. "Stealth mode," she ordered. "We'll hit them where they least expect it. Prepare for a surprise attack. We'll strike fast, then retreat before they can retaliate." The Sovereign's engines hummed to life as they began to move through the asteroid field, using the terrain to hide their presence from the Exrac ships. Every movement was calculated, every action timed to perfection. Elena's hand tightened around the command console as the ship's first strike was launched. Laser fire erupted from the Sovereign's cannons, cutting through the darkness like lightning. The lead Exrac ship erupted in a brilliant explosion, and the Sovereign quickly vanished back into the shadows. The Exrac were momentarily stunned, their ships scattering in confusion. Elena's crew worked quickly, launching several more attacks from concealed positions, picking off smaller vessels in the fleet. The Exrac, disoriented and furious, tried to retaliate but were met with the Sovereign's evasive maneuvers, making it almost impossible to land a blow. Despite the chaos, Elena couldn't help but feel a sense of exhilaration. They weren't just surviving. They were fighting back. They were proving that humanity could still be a force to reckon with. "Captain," Sovereign's voice broke through the tension. "The Exrac fleet is withdrawing. They appear to be regrouping." For a moment, there was silence on the bridge, and then a collective exhale of relief. The crew had done the impossible. They had survived their first encounter with the Exrac, and not only that, but they had made the enemy think twice. Elena stood tall, watching as the Exrac fleet disappeared into the distance. They had won this round, but she knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy was watching, and their enemies would be back, stronger, more determined than ever. "Prepare for the next fight," Elena said, her voice steady. "We've just proven humanity's not as weak as they thought. We'll keep proving it." After the first encounter with the Exrac, Elena knew they couldn't afford to remain on the defensive. The Sovereign had proven its strength, but they had also made it clear to the Exrac that humanity was no longer just a fading memory. The alien fleet had retreated for now, but Elena understood that it wouldn't be long before they returned with reinforcements. If humanity was going to survive, they had to strike first, showing the galaxy and their enemies that they weren't helpless. Gathering her crew on the bridge, Elena made the decision. "We won't wait for them to come to us," she said, her voice unwavering. "We're going after them. We'll strike at the heart of the Exrac fleet while they're regrouping. It's our best chance to take them by surprise." The crew exchanged wary glances, but they all knew the stakes. The Sovereign had enough firepower to hold its own, but it was still only one ship. They'd need strategy, precision, and coordination to pull this off. "Where exactly are we hitting them, Captain?" asked Lieutenant Harlan, her chief strategist. He was a brilliant tactician, and his mind was already working through possible scenarios. "We're going straight for the HFY supply hub," Alina replied, tapping a holographic map that appeared above the console. "It's located on a barren moon, heavily guarded, but without it, their fleet can't function. If we cripple their supply lines, we cripple their entire operation. They'll be forced to pull back and rethink their strategy." Sovereign's eye, still learning and adapting to the crew, chimed in. "Calculating best approach. I have identified a weak point in their defensive perimeter. If we move under cloak and engage with full force, we may be able to disable their defenses before they can react." Alina nodded. Sovereign was right. This was their best chance to gain the upper hand. With the HFY's retreat, they had bought themselves a small window of opportunity, but it wouldn't last forever. She needed to act quickly. "All right, team, prepare for the mission. We'll make it quick, clean, and efficient. We're going in strong, and we're coming out before they even know what hit them." The crew dispersed to their stations, each member fully aware of the risks involved. It was a dangerous gamble, but the Sovereign's advanced technology gave them an edge. The ship's cloaking system would allow them to sneak past enemy radar, and with the element of surprise on their side, they had a fighting chance. The journey to the moon was tense. Every scan, every data transmission felt like it could give them away. The Sovereign moved through space with the grace of a predator, invisible to the eyes of the enemy. They arrived just outside the HFY supply hub without incident. Activating cloaking system, Sovereign's voice echoed through the bridge as the ship shimmered and disappeared from view. Alina's eyes stayed locked on the control panels, her mind sharp. This was it, the moment that could decide the course of humanity's future. Targeting their defense grid, Lieutenant Harlan called out, his fingers flying across the console as the targeting systems locked onto the moon's energy shields. "Fire when ready," Alina ordered, her voice calm, though her pulse was quickening. It was hard to ignore the weight of what they were about to do. This wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a statement, a message to the galaxy that humanity was far from powerless. The Sovereign unleashed a barrage of weapons, targeting key power nodes around the HFY's defenses. Each shot hit its mark with deadly precision. The HFY didn't even have time to react before their shields were failing, and the once impenetrable defense grid began to collapse. Direct hits to their shield generators. "They're weakening," Sovereign reported, its voice tinged with something resembling anticipation. "Now's our chance," Alina muttered, more to herself than to anyone else. "Prepare for boarding." The Sovereign's engines roared to life as they powered forward, emerging from their cloaked state, the ship's guns blazing. The first wave of HFY defense ships exploded in a burst of flame, and the rest scrambled to counterattack. But the Sovereign was already too close. Launching boarding pods, Harlan called out, and a series of small craft launched from the Sovereign, gliding toward the moon's surface, where the HFY's main supply depot was located. "Engage secondary weapons," Alina commanded, and a new wave of attacks struck the HFY's remaining forces, giving their boarding pods the opening they needed. The team was now on the ground, infiltrating the supply hub with surgical precision, using the Sovereign's intelligence to navigate the enemy stronghold. Minutes later, Alina received a comms update. "Captain, we've secured the supply depot," Lieutenant Kessler reported, his voice sharp with relief. "We've disabled their main power grid and looted critical resources. The base is in disarray." "Well done," Alina replied, but there was no time to celebrate. "Get out of there. We're pulling back now." The team quickly retreated to the Sovereign, where the crew executed a flawless retreat under fire. HFY reinforcements were already approaching, but they were too late. The Sovereign slipped back into stealth mode and vanished into the darkness once again, leaving the HFY scrambling to salvage their crippled base. "We've sent them a message," Alina said, standing tall as she watched the stars stretch before them. "Humanity is not to be underestimated. We strike when it matters." The successful strike on the HFY supply hub was a resounding victory for the crew of the Sovereign, but Alina knew better than to rest on their laurels. While they had gained a critical advantage, it was only a matter of time before the HFY would regroup and retaliate with overwhelming force. In the days that followed the attack, they kept a low profile, staying in the far reaches of the galaxy, moving from one uncharted system to the next, doing everything they could to remain undetected. Yet the victory left a lingering question in Alina's mind. What is the cost of this power? The Sovereign had proven to be an unparalleled force, but it wasn't invincible. The crew had only just begun to unlock the full potential of the ship's weaponry and technology, but every test, every experiment with the ship's systems, came with its own risks. Sovereign's eye was capable of more than they had first realized, and the more they pushed its capabilities, the more the ship's systems strained under the pressure. Alina's gut twisted with concern. "Captain, I need to warn you." Sovereign's voice interrupted her thoughts as she stood at the command center late one evening. "Continued use of certain systems at this pace may cause long-term damage to the ship's core functions. The energy reserves are depleting faster than expected." Alina furrowed her brow. "Can't you redirect power from non-essential systems to compensate?" "The systems are interdependent. Attempting to reroute energy could result in complete failure of vital functions," Sovereign replied. "The ship's integrity is at risk." Alina let out a frustrated sigh, rubbing her temples. The Sovereign had become more than just a vessel. It was humanity's last hope. She could feel the weight of that responsibility bearing down on her. But now the very ship that they depended on was starting to show signs of strain. "We need to find a solution, and fast," Alina said, her voice firm, but she could feel the uncertainty creeping in. "I suggest we seek a resupply," Sovereign proposed. "There is a nearby system with a hidden cache of supplies from the days of humanity's empire. It is unclaimed and untouched by current powers." Alina's eyes sparkled with a glimmer of hope. This could be the answer they needed. A resupply could buy them the time they needed to repair the ship's core functions and keep them moving forward in the fight for humanity's future. "We're going there," Alina ordered without hesitation. "Plot the course." The journey was short, but tense. The crew was aware of the risks involved in exposing themselves to unknown territory, especially after the HFY had begun to spread word of their resurgence. They couldn't afford to be caught off guard again. As the Sovereign approached the coordinates provided by Sovereign's database, Alina couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. "We're entering the system," Lieutenant Harlan called out, his voice taut with caution. "There's no sign of the cache. Just empty space." "Keep searching," Alina said. She didn't like the feeling of being led into an empty system, but she couldn't afford to turn back now. Moments later, their scanners picked up something. An object floating in the debris field of a shattered moon. At first, it appeared to be nothing more than scrap, but then Sovereign scanners began to hum with activity. "That's no ordinary debris," Sovereign remarked. "The object appears to be a remnant of a warship, possibly from the final days of humanity's empire." Alina's pulse quickened. Could it be part of the resupply? "I cannot confirm," Sovereign responded. "But there are several readings indicating that it contains a significant amount of resources." "Take us in," Alina ordered. The crew docked with the wreckage, and as they explored the derelict ship, they realized it was much larger than they had anticipated. The ship's corridors were eerily silent, filled only with the sounds of their footsteps and the occasional creak of the metal around them. It was clear that whoever had once occupied this ship had either been lost or fled long ago. Yet the ship's technology was unlike anything they had ever seen. Older than the Sovereign, yet advanced in ways that baffled even Sovereign's eye. As they explored deeper into the ship, they found the remnants of what had once been a thriving human military installation. Weapons, supplies, and artifacts were scattered across the abandoned hangars. But there was something else. something far more unsettling. The deeper they went, the more they realized that the ship was not entirely abandoned. "What is that?" Lieutenant Kessler asked, his voice low, as he pointed toward a faint glow coming from a sealed chamber deep within the ship. Elena gestured for him to approach. They opened the chamber to find a mysterious console, flickering with an unfamiliar interface. Sovereign's voice filled the silence. "This is a control panel," Sovereign observed. "It seems to be linked to the ship's central power core. It's possible it could help repair the Sovereign, but there are unknown risks." Elena hesitated, her instincts telling her that the power they needed could come at a dangerous cost. But she had no choice. They were running out of time. "Activate it," Elena said, steeling herself for whatever came next. The mysterious warship, long forgotten by the galaxy, held secrets that Elena and her crew had barely begun to unravel. They had activated the strange console deep within the abandoned ship, hoping it would offer them the resources they so desperately needed. But instead of a simple resupply, they had unearthed something much more ominous. The console's display flickered to life, revealing a set of encrypted files, many of which were beyond Sovereign's current decryption abilities. But as the crew studied the data, one thing became abundantly clear. This ship was connected to the last remnants of humanity's military. And it wasn't just a vessel. It was a weapon. Something far more dangerous than anything they had ever encountered. "Sovereign, what are we dealing with here?" Elena asked, her voice tight with unease. "This vessel appears to be one of the few remaining prototypes from the final stages of humanity's military development," Sovereign responded, its voice devoid of emotion, but with an undertone of caution. It was designed as a last-ditch effort to counteract the rising threats of alien species, including the X-Rack. However, the technology it houses is unstable. There are references to a dark matter engine that was meant to power the weaponry and defenses, but I have no further details. Elena's mind raced. A weapon. A last-ditch effort against the X-Rack. She glanced around at her crew, knowing that this discovery would change everything. The Sovereign was already humanity's last hope, but now it seemed there was something more, something that could tip the scales in their favor. Or, if used recklessly, something that could obliterate them all. "We need to learn more about this dark matter engine," Elena said, trying to steady her thoughts. "It could be exactly what we need to push back the X-Rack." Lieutenant Harlan stepped forward, his face serious. "Captain, we should be cautious. If the engine is as volatile as it seems, we could be playing with something far more dangerous than we can control." Elena nodded. Harlan's concerns were valid. If the technology was as powerful as the files suggested, there was no telling what kind of damage it could do, either to the Sovereign or to the crew. Still, the temptation to gain an edge over their enemies was too great. "We'll proceed carefully," Elena said. "But this could be the key to turning the tide in our favor. We can't afford to waste it." The crew worked together to decipher the rest of the files, slowly unlocking the ship's secrets. The more they uncovered, the clearer it became that this warship had been designed not just to fight, but to destroy on an unimaginable scale. The dark matter engine was an unstable power source, capable of altering the very fabric of space and time if harnessed correctly. Elena stood in the command center, staring at the data as it streamed across the screen. Sovereign's voice interrupted her thoughts. "Captain, I have located the core of the dark matter engine. It is still active, though its stabilization protocols have failed. If it is not contained soon, the core could go critical and destabilize the entire system." "What kind of stabilization protocols are we talking about?" Elena asked, her heart beginning to race. "There are two options," Sovereign explained. "One involves using a powerful energy source to temporarily stabilize the engine. The other involves a complete shutdown, which will require the sacrifice of the ship's remaining energy reserves." Elena glanced at her crew, her mind working through the possibilities. Using the engine could give them an unprecedented advantage over the X-Rack, but at what cost? A complete shutdown of the core would leave the Sovereign vulnerable, and with the X-Rack hunting them, they couldn't afford to be weakened. We don't have much time, Elena said, turning to Harlan. What do you think? Do we risk using the engine's power, or do we shut it down? Harlan hesitated, his eyes narrowing in thought. The engine's power could give us a devastating edge. But if we don't stabilize it, we could lose everything. It's a gamble, Captain. Before Elena could respond, a loud alarm echoed throughout the ship. The scanners had detected movement. Large ships were heading straight for their location. The X-Rack had found them. We don't have a choice now, Elena said, her voice decisive. We activate the engine. Prepare for whatever happens next. The crew moved swiftly, aligning the ship's systems with the unstable core. The air on the bridge grew tense as they worked, the hum of the Sovereign's engines growing louder and more erratic. The dark matter engine began to power up, its energy crackling violently through the ship's systems. Outside, the X-Rack fleet closed in. We're running out of time, Elena said. Once we engage this engine, we either win or we don't make it out of here. The ship shuddered as the core's power reached a crescendo. The crew braced themselves for the unknown as the Sovereign prepared to unleash the full force of the dark matter engine. And then, with a deafening roar, the Sovereign surged forward, the galaxy around them warping and bending in the wake of the unleashed power. The Sovereign shuddered as the dark matter engine reached full power. A pulsing energy radiated through the ship's systems, shaking the hull as if the very fabric of reality was being stretched and compressed. The bridge lit up with chaotic readings, flashes of energy, surges of power that seemed almost unnatural. Elena gripped the armrest of her chair, her knuckles white, as the ship trembled under the immense strain of the unstable core. Sovereign, she called out, her voice calm despite the growing intensity. What's the status of the engine? Can it hold? Stabilization is not complete, Sovereign replied, its voice clipped. The energy output is well beyond acceptable parameters. The core is on the verge of catastrophic failure. Elena's heart pounded in her chest. The X-Rack fleet was closing in fast, and they had no time to waste. They had activated the engine in the hopes of gaining an advantage. But now, it seemed like they might have unleashed something far more dangerous than they realized. How long do we have before it goes critical? Elena asked, her voice tight. At current power levels, approximately 10 minutes before total core destabilization, Sovereign answered, its tone more urgent now. If not stabilized immediately, the explosion could decimate this entire system. The weight of the situation crashed down on Elena, but she knew there was no turning back now. They had to use the engine's power before it was too late. The X-Rack were almost within firing range, and this was their only chance. Prepare to fire everything we've got, Elena ordered, her voice steel hard. We can't waste any more time. Lieutenant Harlan's fingers flew over the command console, preparing the ship's weapon systems. The Sovereign's weaponry was formidable, but the power they had now harnessed was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. The dark matter engine was capable of tearing apart entire fleets with a single shot if used correctly. Sovereign, Elena said, her focus sharp, initiate fire sequence. Target the X-Rack fleet's flagship. It's the most heavily armored. Take it down first. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The Sovereign's energy cannons hummed with power, and a blinding beam of dark energy shot out toward the X-Rack flagship. The beam sliced through space like a blade, a trail of distortion following in its wake. The flagship, previously an imposing presence, erupted in a brilliant explosion that left a gap in the X-Rack formation. Direct hit, Harlan said, his voice filled with awe. The flagship's shields are gone, Captain. They're scrambling. Elena nodded, her eyes scanning the battlefield. The X-Rack fleet had been thrown into chaos, their formation breaking apart as they tried to recover from the devastating blow. But they were far from defeated. The remaining ships were regrouping, their weapons charging for retaliation. Ready another shot, Elena ordered, her tone unwavering. Keep hitting them until they can't fight back. But as the Sovereign charged its weapons again, something unexpected happened. A ripple in space, a violent distortion, suddenly appeared in front of them. The dark matter engine had triggered something far worse than just power surges. The energy they had harnessed had torn open a rift in the fabric of space itself. "Sovereign!" Elena shouted, panic creeping into her voice. "What is that?" "A rift in spacetime has been formed," Sovereign reported, its voice strained. "It is not a stable rift. It is unpredictable. If we continue to fire, we may lose control entirely." Before Elena could respond, the rift began to pull at the Sovereign, dragging the ship toward it with an unnatural force. The ship's systems whined as they struggled to maintain stability. "We can't get pulled in," Elena ordered, frantically trying to steady the ship. "Shut down the engine." "Shutting down is impossible while the energy is active," Sovereign replied, sounding almost helpless. "The rift's gravitational pull is too strong. The Sovereign is being dragged toward it." The bridge was filled with a tense silence as the crew scrambled to stabilize the ship. The force pulling them toward the rift was too powerful to overcome, and with every second that passed, it became more apparent that the Sovereign was at the mercy of the rift. "We need to get out of here," Elena said, desperation creeping into her voice. "All hands, prepare for emergency escape." Lieutenant Kessler turned to Elena, his face pale. "Captain, the rift is pulling us in. If we don't get out now, we'll be trapped in wherever this thing leads." Elena's eyes locked onto the rift. She had to make a choice that could either save them or condemn them all. They could risk everything and try to escape through the rift, hoping it led to somewhere safe, or they could remain outside the rift's pull, certain that the X-Rack would soon overtake them. "Activate the warp drive," Elena said. Her voice steadied despite the chaos around her. "We're going through." The crew worked quickly to reroute power, and within moments, the Sovereign's engines roared to life. They shot toward the rift, diving straight into the unknown. For a brief moment, everything went dark. The ship's systems flickered and whined as the crew braced for impact. Then, with a jarring lurch, the Sovereign was thrust into another realm of space, one that neither the crew nor Sovereign could understand. There was no turning back now. They had crossed into something unknown, and the galaxy as they knew it was no longer the same. The Sovereign lurched violently as it was sucked into the rift. The ship's hull groaned under the strain, and the blaring alarms echoed through the command center. Crew members clung to their stations, trying to keep the ship from tearing apart as the fabric of reality seemed to twist and contort around them. Elena gritted her teeth, her hands white-knuckled on the control panel. "Sovereign," she called out, her voice sharp. "Status report. What are we dealing with here?" The ship's AI responded with a strained tone. "The rift is destabilizing. We are in an unknown region of spacetime, Captain. Sensors are malfunctioning, and we have no reliable navigation data." The Sovereign systems were failing one by one as they were pulled deeper into the unknown. Every moment felt like an eternity as the ship surged through the rift. But then, as suddenly as it had started, the pulling force stopped. The ship drifted in a vast, empty void. The unnatural pull was gone, replaced by an eerie calm. Elena quickly scanned the readings. Their warp drive had stopped functioning, and the rift was closing behind them. They were stranded, completely isolated in an unfamiliar part of the universe. She stood up and turned to her crew, knowing that their situation had just become even more perilous. "Report," she demanded. Lieutenant Harlan's fingers flew over the console. "We've lost power to the warp drive, Captain. The rift tore through our systems too aggressively. We can't jump back through it without risking total failure. We're stuck here." Kessler, standing near the sensors, looked up with a frown. "We're also picking up strange readings. No life forms, but we're getting multiple energy sources from various locations. It's like this place is alive." Elena's brow furrowed. "What are you saying, Lieutenant?" "It's hard to explain," Kessler replied, But these energy readings don't seem like anything natural. It's almost as if there's something in the fabric of space here. Like the very space itself is charged. Elena stood still for a moment, absorbing the weight of his words. The Sovereign was far from the galaxy they knew, and now the rules that governed their survival were no longer clear. She had no idea what kind of dangers they were facing, but one thing was certain: they had to survive, no matter the cost. "We need to find a way to get out of here," she said firmly. "And we need to find out what those energy sources are. If there's a chance of fixing the Sovereign or discovering a way home, we're going to find it." The crew nodded, their resolve hardening. They had already faced the X-Rack, the unstable power of the dark matter engine, and the rift itself. Now they were in the unknown, where every step forward could be a step toward either salvation or destruction. As they worked to analyze the strange readings, they discovered something chilling. The energy sources weren't just scattered randomly. They were forming a pattern, a network that seemed to be pulling them toward a singular point. "This is it," Elena said, her voice low but certain. "Whatever is out there is guiding us." The Sovereign powered up its engines once again, following the trail of energy sources that beckoned them. The ship's systems were strained, but they were operational. Their scanners were still unreliable, but they had no choice but to press on. As the ship moved forward, the surroundings grew even more bizarre. The space around them shifted, the stars themselves distorting in ways that defied logic. It was as if they were traveling through some kind of fluid medium, where nothing remained constant for long. Elena's stomach churned as she tried to make sense of it, but there was no pattern, no predictability. They were being drawn into something far bigger than they could comprehend. "Captain," Sovereign's voice cut through the tension. "I've detected something ahead. A structure. It's massive, and the energy signatures are overwhelming. It's unlike anything in our database." Elena's pulse quickened. A structure. Could it be another remnant from the old empire? "I do not know, Captain, but it is not organic. It seems artificial. And the energy readings suggest it is somehow manipulating the surrounding space-time." Her mind raced. If this structure was artificial, it could be the key to understanding this place, and possibly finding a way home. But there was also a risk. What if it was a trap? What if it was the source of all this strange energy? "We'll approach cautiously," Elena ordered. "Prepare for anything." The Sovereign moved toward the structure, the tension palpable in the air. As they drew closer, the structure took shape, a vast, monolithic object, hovering in the void. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, a sprawling network of metallic tendrils that seemed to be woven together, stretching out into the infinite expanse. It pulsed with energy, and the closer they got, the more Elena could feel the strange force emanating from it. "We're close now," Kessler said, his voice tight. "The energy is almost suffocating. It's everywhere." Elena stood tall at the helm. This was it. Whatever lay within this structure held the potential to change everything, for better or for worse. And the fate of her crew, and humanity itself, rested in the unknown. "Prepare for docking," Elena said, her voice unwavering. "We're going in." The Sovereign neared the structure, the walls of space and time shifting around them. Whatever awaited them, it was clear. They had crossed into the unknown, and there would be no going back.